So good afternoon, everybody, and let's begin today's lecture. Okay, yeah, good afternoon, Nikira. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, that's great. Let's begin. So these presentations, they are now available on your folder bit.ly/uom underscore docs. So you should find them. So you should find them in over here. So it's not showing. So it's somewhere down there. Ideally, it should have shown. I don't know where it is. Oh, here it is. So parallel computing fundamentals point 1 and point 2. So there are two presentations, and you all can, if you all want access to this presentation, you can get it from here. So let me just quickly go through what we have done so far. Okay. So we are kind of focusing on parallel computing fundamentals. So the first thing that we started with was we spoke about a computer architecture, and we said any computer is made up of processor, memory, hard disk, peripherals, and a clock. Everything depends on your clock. Okay, so the speed at which clock they ticks, that is your kind of also becomes your speed of your computer, and that is also kind of tells you how many instructions are going to be executed. So the operating, so it says the operating system software manages the entire computer software hardware. So your operating system is the software which actually converts all your commands from all your programs and sends it to your processor. Your processor is the main central piece inside your computer which is executing that machine instruction. So here it says our hand watch wall clocks that we use in a home ticks every second, right? So and hence somebody joined in. Yes, Joel, I think I'm recording. Yeah, recording is going on. So our watches that we put in our hand, the clocks that we see in our wall, on the wall, they kind of tick every second. So that means they are 1 hertz. Okay, one clock cycle every second. But a modern computer, they kind of tick 9 zeros, like one followed by 9 zeros, at least that many times per second. So this is like if you have one with followed with 9 zeros, that is like 1 gigahertz. So that many times your clock is ticking inside your computer every time. So so my for example, my laptop is right now having a frequency of 2.8 gigahertz, which means it is ticking 28 followed by 8 zeros times every second, and every time it ticks, it is one clock cycle, and every clock cycle one instruction can be executed. So that is the way you need to calculate. One clock cycle is equal to one instruction, and if the clock is ticking 100 times in a second, that means 100 instructions can be carried out in 1 second. So that so one way of increasing the how can you execute more instructions is by increasing the speed of the clock. So if you are increasing instead of having, so you can have at least 8 followed by 8 zeros instructions in 1 second. So if you increase the speed of the clock, more instructions can be executed on your computer. So so that type of tech. Oh, hold on. I'm finding it difficult to move between this. Alt tab does not work. So this technique of increasing the number of instructions per second by increasing the clock speed is called frequency scaling. So remember this word, frequency scaling. So in the olden days we had one processor, and manufacturers would try to create a faster computer by creating a faster processor. Faster processor would mean the frequency is very high. So it is like it may be one, initially it was in 1 kilohertz, then it went to megahertz, and then now it is in gigahertz. But the problem is as you keep on increasing the frequency of your clock, inside your computer, the computer becomes hot, and the moment it becomes hot, your circuits don't behave in the same manner, at that particular temperature. So there is a limit on how fast a computer can run, right? How much are you going to make that computer tick? So there is going to be so because of that heating problem, there was a limit on how fast a computer can run. So that is the time they introduced the core technology. So now inside, so initially inside the processor there was one core, but now they have kind of improvising on the performance of the computer by increasing the number of cores. Now cores is like your executing unit inside the processor, right? We have discussed that what is inside a core, and inside the core we have a inside the processor. Inside the processor we have a core, we have a arithmetic logic unit. So the one way of increasing the amount of work that can be done is by increasing the number of cores or number of ALUs inside. So let me quickly bring up the so when we say a processor, what all we said, it is in the processor we have arithmetic logic unit which will do all your mathematical operations, and then there is a core which is actually executing the instruction, and then you have registers and cache which is actually storing your instruction and part of your data. And cache is something like, instead of going to the memory, to the RAM, your cache can store some data in advance, so this cache is basically speeding up the work. Now this if you're trying to fetch any information from memory, like the processor is trying to fetch information from memory, is going to take long time. So that's why we have to try to avoid going to the memory as much as possible. Try to operate in the processor zone. Okay. So the one way of increasing the speed of the processor was speeding up the clock. So which is called frequency scaling, right? That is what we mentioned about. But frequency scaling has a limit, because after a particular point, your computer will become hot, and it will stop. It will not work the way you want it. So one way of doing it is you multiply. Instead of having one ALU, you have two ALUs. Instead of having one core, you have two cores. Instead of having one register, you have two registers. Instead of having one cache, you have two cache. So this is one way of improvising on the performance of the computer. It's like if you are trying to create, let's say, create a building, then one person can only work at a pace of maybe 100 bricks per day. But if you have two people, then you have 2 bricks per day. If you have 3 people, you can have 300 bricks per day. You see, by increasing the number of people, more work can be done. In the same way, inside the processor, if you multiply all the parts inside the processor, it becomes easier for the processor to do more tasks, and that is how parallel computing is achieved. So now, if earlier you could, let's say, the clock speed was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this was your clock speed, so ticks per second. So this would mean minimum how many instructions can be done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This many machine instructions can be executed. But this many machine instructions can be executed per core, which means if I have 2 cores, this is going to multiply. So how many instructions can I execute in 1 second now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Machine instructions per dual core. Dual core means 2 cores. And if it is for quad core, means we are going for 4 times, right? 4 8s are 32, 4 2s are 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Per quad core. So this is one way of increasing your number of instructions that can be executed by the core. But core is not the only piece inside your processor. Your ALU also is doing some work, right? So what does your ALU do? Your ALU is your arithmetic logic unit. It does calculations like A plus B, A star B, C star D. So when it is also doing logical operations. So it is also doing logical operations like A less than B, not of A, A or B. So it is doing all these operations. While the ALU is doing all this operation, the core is doing something else. It is managing the instruction. But whenever the arithmetic and logical calculations have to be done, who is given that task? The arithmetic logic unit. So if I say there are 2 ALUs, and if I have a formula something like A plus, if I have a formula something like A plus B plus C plus D, it is very obvious if I have 2 ALUs in my single instruction itself, even if I have 1 core, okay, But if I have two ALUs, I can give A plus B to one ALU and I can give C plus D to second ALU. So the combination of, it does not mean if there are two cores there are going to be two ALU. So it does not mean if there is one core there is going to be only one ALU. There can be one core plus there can be four ALUs. There can be one core plus more registers. There can be one core plus more caches. That also is parallel computing. So parallel computing is all about not only doing things simultaneously, but essentially somewhere down it is improvising the performance of the computer. So then we said who is giving all these instructions to the processor? Ultimately some software is working for you, right? That is the operating system. He is like your intermediator. So between your applications and your machine, your operating system is the main communicator. So operating system, operating system can send only one instruction at a time, right? That is what we said. Means basically there will be a queue of all instructions. So let's draw the queue over here. So I1 may be belonging to application. So that let's assume there is application 1 and there is application A2. In application A1 we have instructions I1, I2 and I3. These are the instructions. See, it may be your lines of code inside any program like Java program or anything, and here I will have I4, I5 and I6. So who is managing this application? Your operating system, right? So your operating system ultimately is managing all your applications. So how does operating system manage all your application? It will queue your instructions. So there will be I4 over here, I2 over here. So you see there is the order of the instruction. It does not matter, because an instruction is an instruction. A machine is told to is like a robot, right? You tell him to move from one place to another place. It doesn't understand who has told him to do it. If the robot has been told he has to move from place A to place B, it will move. That is a command it understands. It doesn't matter where the command is coming from. I1, I2, I3, I4, I5. Okay. So this is a queue of machine instructions. So let's draw the queue. So so here this kind of mix of queue, right? This is called interleaving. Interleaving is mixed up. Interleaving of machine instructions. So this because you are interleaving the machine instructions, no one application is getting all the processor time all the time. You will get there will be some piece of the processor which application 1 will get it, some piece of the processor application 2 will get it, because all the instructions is queued up, right? So everybody is going to progress forward slowly and steadily. So A2 also moves forward and A1 also moves forward. But if you have more applications, then some application will take maybe a little slow, but they will not stop. They will keep moving forward because you are interleaving all the machine instructions, and this machine instructions is given one by one to the processor. Who gives it? So operating system has its instructions of queue and it gives it to the processor one by one. Remember this, it goes one instruction at a time. But everyone feels they are moving forward at this, at the same time. A2 feels I4 is executed and A1 feels I1 is also executed. It doesn't A1 and A2 do not have a feeling that they are waiting for the processor. The operating system is managing this. Now this technique is called multitasking, right? But as soon as it reaches the processor, if you have two cores inside it, I1 will be given to core 1 and I4 will be given to core 2. So two cores, so at a time two instructions are getting executed, even though one instruction is going at a time. In one clock cycle, I can also give two instructions if there are two cores. If there are two cores, two instructions can go in at a time. That means we are going to have a 5, 6, whatever, this many machine instructions can be executed per second. So multitasking, it is not true parallel computing, because only it has a capacity of giving only one instruction. Parallel computing, true power is in the hardware, not in the software. Now before all these instructions are going into the queue, all the code, the application code, right, all this A1 and A2, we said it is stored in the memory. Memory is what? Your RAM. So let's draw the RAM over here. So as I told you, any program, so let's say I have A1 program over here. A1 program starts with a process. And how does the process begin? The process begins by creating a thread, and the thread will have two parts. What it will have? It will have a program, that is a code part, and the data section. Right? So this is your application 1, which is code part and data part. So it's not doesn't look good. So let me draw a line. So code and data, it is not mixed up. Always remember, the code and data is kept separately, but they are bound to the thread. Now this is where your threading comes into place. What is threading? Threading is nothing but your sequence of instructions that has to be executed. Threading is a execution flow of sequence of instructions. So here we are not talking about one instructions, or we are not talking about one line of code. We are talking about maybe many lines of code inside your program. So all that is attached to a thread over here. So let us populate this section of the memory. So in your memory, part of the section will be given to your code and part of the section will be given to a thread. This data section is called the local storage area for the thread T1. It is called the master thread. There's no such term as master thread, but I'm just naming it for your understanding purpose. So this master thread is created every time a application is created. Okay. And so just like A1 application has been given some space, so this is where all your instructions are coming from. Your instructions, your I1, I2 and I3, where it is in the code section over here. So now I'm going to have space problem. So let me see, I1, I2 and I3, it is in the code section. Okay, remember this. And in the same way, there is going to be another thread in the same memory. A2 is going to be here. Okay, this need to increase the font again. So A2 application is going to create thread 2, and that thread also is going to have its own, that application will also have its code section and data section. So this much. So this is another, so in your memory all these applications have to be loaded first, okay? Before, oh, so yeah, oh, what is this? I want yellow color. So this is T2 is a master thread for which application? It is a master thread for application number 2. So what is a thread? Thread is now, what thread is? Thread is now you have to execute all these instructions I1, I2, I3. It's a flow of instruction. I1, I2, I3 is a group which is attached to a T1. So it is like it is part of your function call, maybe, you know, that is attached to the thread. It is part of your main function call. So I1, I2, I3 is part of T1, and I1, I2, I3 is taken by the operating system and put it up in the queue, and then one by one it goes to the processor. So just like we have I1, I2, I3 instruction here, we will have in the code section we'll have, so again let's decrease the font, we'll have I4, I5 and I6. So now there is thread 2, T1 and T2. So the operating system doesn't read I1, I2, I3. It is communicating with the threads. So your operating system is a very critical part which knows it takes T1 thread and it also manages T2 thread. So the moment operating system gets back the result from the processor, it knows this instruction was I1, then it knows whom to give back the data, right? It belongs to which thread. So that thread, the data goes back and gets stored in the data section, and the code reads it from the data section over here. So for the program, everything works between these two sections. The operating system is the main intermediator who knows where to pick the data from, how to queue it, how to give it to the processor. So this kind of process management is called multi-threading. So multi-threading also is not true, it is not true parallel computing. Multi-threading is what we say concurrent computing. Concurrent computing means at the same time. So the operating system manages multi-threading. That is why multi-threading is possible. Otherwise, one application will have to wait for a long time before the application 2 is getting executed. Because multi-threading is there, because multitasking is there, you are getting a feeling like many applications can be executed on the same computer. And because multi processing is there, or parallel computing is there, so parallel computing is also multi-processing. So this is the main difference between multitasking, multi-threading and multi-processing. Okay, so multi-processing does not mean we are not talking about this process. We are talking about the processes inside your processor. Multi-threading is your process management, which is part of your memory. All the magic is working over here. Okay, so in multi-threading, the master thread can create another thread, which means the moment you say thread means it is a set of instructions and it is a set of data. So let us assume application 1 creates another thread. So what are we saying? When application 1 creates another thread, we are giving it a code section and we are giving it a data section. So a separate memory area for that thread. That is what we are saying when we create a thread. So it gets a code section and it gets a data section. So let us color this. Okay. So this is which thread now? This is your child thread, you can see. So this is like T, okay, black color. So this is like T 1.1. So again, as I said, T 1.1 is a child of the master thread. The master thread has created some I2 code, line of code has created this thread, and this I2 code, when it has created this thread, what happened? This code and data section got free. It may be a function call, which is we can say I want this function to execute on a separate thread. Now what is the advantage of creating another thread? For the operating system, it does not matter how many threads are there. T1 is same as T1.1. Okay, so if one thread is creating 2 threads, 4 threads, operating system will give this same priority unless you have mentioned very clearly that this is a background thread, a daemon program, or this is your priority number 1 thread. You can give priority to threads also. So that is the way of telling operating system, give this thread of mine greater preference. If you have to make a choice between what to put in the queue first, give it a higher thread priority. So not only every program is having a master thread, but every program can create independent separate threads inside your memory. So that is all about multi-threading. So understand the difference between multitasking, multi-threading, and multiprocessing. So this is very important to understand when we speak about parallel computing. And understand what is concurrent computing. Concurrent computing is an execution of multiple threads, multiple instructions at the same time, but it is not we are giving a feeling of multiple instructions when executed at the same time, but ultimately it depends on the multiprocessor. If multiprocessor can execute only one instruction at a time, then that is how it will work. So operating system has a very important role. So we have already gone through this. Processor has core, it has arithmetic logic unit, register, cache, and control unit. We have also spoken about this. If you increase the number of cores, more instructions can be executed. If you increase the ALUs, more arithmetic logical calculations can be done. If you increase the registers, register is a very small memory unit inside your processor. It is not as big as a cache, it is not as big as a memory, but it is the nearest memory to the processor. So here you have your processor, right? So your register is the nearest, but it is the smallest memory and it is the fastest memory. And your cache is the second fastest and your RAM is the third fastest. So which memory is the fastest? Register is the fastest. So if you store A and B inside the register, it is going to process it and store the results in the register. Then from the register you transfer it to the cache, you transfer it to the RAM, it doesn't matter. But register is not very big. You cannot store a lot of data in memory. Like you may have a register of maybe let's say a few kilobytes or whatever, or cache maybe 100 kilobytes, or RAM will be in gigabytes. So it depends on how big is your memory and how much you can pack in one processor. So we spoke about instruction parallelism last time. We said pipeline processing. So every instruction goes through 5 steps, every one machine instruction. So every machine instruction goes through fetch stage, decode stage, execute stage, store and save. So fetch is actually storing your register, getting your instruction, putting it into the register. Decode is like trying to understand what the instruction is about. Is it a arithmetic logical instruction? Is it an instruction to print something on the printer? Your decode, it can mean anything, right? So executing is actually executing the instruction. So the execution, if it is arithmetic logic unit, then definitely if it is a arithmetic operation, then definitely that will be executed by the arithmetic logic unit, and then the data has to be pulled back by the core. So store and save is basically storing it to the memory and saving it to the register. So understand, when you say memory, in this case it would mean RAM, and register is the nearest smallest and fastest memory, smallest memory nearest to the processor. So every instruction goes through 5 clock cycles, which means it will take 5 ticks. And but in a pipeline processor, so ideally when one instruction is going through all these 5 steps, the second instruction cannot do this. So that is called, that is without a pipeline. So this one instruction, right, I1, is broken down into 5 instructions. So every instruction will have, so this will be like F1 means F is for fetch of instruction 1. We'll have decode 1. We'll have what is that? Execute 1, store 1, and save 1. So ideally I4 cannot get into this, the processor has to finish all this 5 steps, and then only I4 can be executed. This is what used to happen in the earlier computer. I4 had to wait, but right now pipeline, while D1 is executed, if D1 is currently been executed, not everything is happening at the same time, right? First F1 happens, then D1 happens, and E1 happens, and ST1 happens, and SA1 happens. So let's assume let us assume the instruction 1 has finished your F1, your has finished the first 4 operations, and it is right now carrying on the SA1. If it is a pipeline processor, so let's just assume this is a pipeline processor. If it is a pipeline processor, the hardware circuit, it is basically a hardware circuit, and this hardware circuit, your fetch circuit, your decode circuit, execute circuit, store circuit, and save circuit will be created in such a way that while the instruction 1 has been saved, your instruction 4 is getting stored, while your instruction 4 is this. Okay, so while your instruction 4 is getting stored, your instruction 2, right, so execute, which is like your next instruction, so right, your instruction 4 is getting stored over here, your I2 instruction is getting executed over here, your I3 is going to get what? It is going to get decoded over here. So this is like D3 then. I hope you all are understanding what I'm saying over here. And while your D3 is getting executed, your instruction 6 is getting fetched over here. So this will be F6. So now, because of the pipeline processor, the instructions in the queue don't have to wait for the, your current instruction to get over, because all the operations of the processor, which is fetch, decode, execute, store, and save, they can be executed independently. So this is also parallelism, right? So this kind of parallelism is at the instruction level, and hence it is called instruction level parallelism. So parallelism is not only at the processor, at the core level. Okay, parallelism is everywhere in the hardware. Everything can be multiplied, everything can be executed simultaneously. It is parallelism is happening at the process level inside your memory. Multi-threading is kind of parallelism. Your parallelism is happening in multitasking, where all the instructions, they don't have to wait on each other, they are all moving forward parallelly. At the instruction level also, one instruction is broken down into 5 instructions, and that level also parallelism is achieved through pipeline processing. And finally, inside the processor, the hardware itself, if it is multiplied, there are more numbers of it, then parallelism is achieved even there. So parallelism is everywhere. It just depends on how you do things parallelly. But parallel computing, we are talking about multi-processing. But parallelism is everywhere. Then we spoke about superscalar processor. Superscalar processor is basically an advancement of pipeline processing, but you have more ALUs. The moment you have more ALUs, you have to understand more arithmetic calculations can be done. The moment there is pipeline processing, it is also more pipeline processing. Okay, superscalar processor. So what I mean is, now instead of having one pipeline, I will have 2 pipelines over here. So this is your superscalar processor. Okay, there are 2 pipelines. So all these instructions, whatever is being executed, some of that can come even here. This is your first pipeline processor, this is your second pipeline processor. So 2 pipelines are there. If you have the more number of pipelines, means you can execute more instructions, right? So that is what is called superscalar processor. Okay. Your pipeline processing is also called very large instruction word. Okay, if you see this word technology, or we are talking about parallelism, then this word is also related to it. So we spoke about what is a program, right? Program is nothing but a combination of your instructions plus your data, and whenever you create a program, what happens? The application, first you create an application, and application is what? A set of programs. You will have 2 programs inside your application. My Java 1 dot let's say my 1.java, my 2.java. So you can have 2 programs in a single application. So for both these programs, they are part of the same process. And whenever you are starting an application, what you're doing, you're starting a process. And what does the process do? It creates a master thread. And what does the master thread do? It will have a set of instructions and some amount of data associated with it, which is going to be executed in a sequential manner. So you can have, one process can have multiple threads. As we said, the master thread and the many child threads can be created out of a single process. which means when you say single process means out of a single program, which also means single application. And the operating system is managing multiple application. An application has multiple programs. An app program we may have multiple processes. When one process and uh, uh, one application has multiple processes, this is something I'm not very sure with if that is possible. It is like saying we are creating two different application, but logically it should be possible. Okay, but definitely one process can have multiple threads, and one thread can have a set of instructions. That set of instruction can be 10 lines of code, or it can be 100 lines of code. So here we are talking about software parallelism. Okay, so this is all about when the program application begin, a process is created, master process is created, a master thread is created, and after master thread, if there are more threads, then more threads are created. So here there is a function, right? Function add a b and c is equal to a plus b. Subtract a comma b, which does a minus b. You can create two threads. Instruction 2 is calling a function add using a new thread t1.1. Instruction 3 is calling a function subtract using a new thread called t1.2. So a single application is creating two different threads. So what is when you're having multiple threads, any instructions can get executed by the processor. It depends on the operating system, right? If if this line of code c is equal to a plus b gets a priority, as an instruction to be executed on the processor, c is equal to a plus b might get executed before d is equal to a minus b. The order of execution of instructions become, you cannot control it. If you have simply written this kind of program, then the instructions of any thread can be executed at any given time. So this we have said what is pipeline, what is superscalar, what is multitasking, what is multiple threading, multi-threading. So remember this, multi-processing and not multitasking or multi-threading achieves true parallel computing. Multitasking or multi-threading gives you a feeling of better application level performance. So this is what we did in our last lecture. So now we will move forward. Let me save this first. So now we are going to get inside your multi-processing, the hardware part. So concurrent computing, we have kind of covered, right? We spoke about threading and concurrent computing, and we will cover a little bit more later. But first we will cover the multi-processing in today's lecture. Okay, so do you want to take a small break of few minutes, 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes? Is everybody there? Okay. So we'll start at is 3:55. We'll start at 4 o'clock. I am be available on this conference. Okay. Just have some. I'm just going to have some water or something, and then we'll continue. You also have something. Okay, so let's begin. So can we start? Continue forward. Okay, great. Thank you, Juba. So let's continue. So now we are going to look into the hardware a little bit more. So here we are looking at multi-processor architecture, symmetric, multi-processor, asymmetric, uniform, memory architecture, and NUMA. So let us, can we have a diagram? So when we say we have a symmetric multi-processing unit, what we are saying is symmetric means same, right? That's what symmetric means. So it means if there are like two processors inside your system, so processor 1 and let's say processor 2, it means so let's say this is processor 1 and let us say this is processor 2. When we say symmetric multiprocessing, it means the architecture, the capability of both this processor is the same. So it has the same architecture, it has the same capability, everything is the same. So there is no difference between P1 and P2. It's just that it is more in number. So and you have it inside your machine like this is a machine. You have two processors of the same architecture and same capabilities. So where do you get this? Where do you get to see this kind of architecture? You get to see this in a multi-core processor. What is your multi-core processor? Basically a processor with multiple cores. So if you notice inside your, so not only we can have multiple processor, but a processor can have multiple cores, and cores are also like, a core is also a processor. So you can have a dual core over here and you can have a quad core over here. Sorry. Difficult to draw, but right. So you have so let us assume one is this is a quad core. So a core is also a processor. In your cloud, when they give you kind of, they say they're giving you one processor, two processors. They're not giving you the entire processor. They're just giving you cores of the processor, because a core is also a processor. It is a virtual CPU. So all these cores inside the processor, they are of the same nature, and this kind of processing is called symmetric multiprocessing. So if you have whatever this one core can do, the second core also can do. So this is called symmetric multiprocessing. The example is your CPU, central processing. So this kind of CPU multi-core processor, you can say, is an example of symmetric multiprocessing. If symmetric multiprocessing, all the processors are of the same capability, then definitely if in a asymmetric, if there are two processors, let's say P3 and P4, then what are we saying? They are different architecture and different capabilities. So where do we see this kind of an example? When a single computer, so let's say we have a computer, has two processors. Where do we see this example of asymmetric multiprocessing? We see that mostly on modern computers you will find your P3, let's say one processor is a CPU and you will have a GPU. GPU is also a processor, but what GPU does and what CPU does are two different things. Okay, so what CPU is trying to achieve and what GPU is trying to achieve are two different things. So they are designed for different purposes, for different their architectures are different, their capabilities are different, and their needs are different. When you have a CPU plus GPU inside your computer, this kind of computing is usually called accelerated computing. Accelerate means let's say you're driving a car, you accelerate the car, right? It moves fast. So GPU is basically used to accelerate your computing, but it is used to accelerate a certain type of computing. So GPUs are for showing, for your videos, for your images, image processing work, for your big data. All this kind of work, GPU is designed specifically so that your so your GPU is meant for all this work. Your CPU is meant to manage your work with your operating system, right? It is used to manage all your programs. It is used for to deal with your printer, with your mouse. There's so many things that a CPU is like. Is like the somebody, let's say in the house, let's say a mother is there in the house. A mother is doing cooking, let's say is doing washing, is doing everything, is sending your child to the school, or it can be mother is doing everything, right? So CPU is something like this. Your GPU is like, let's say your father is going to office, father is not doing any work, let's say inside the house, but he's going to the office. So he is like one person who's going to the office, but in that office 15,000 people are coming, and in that office 15,000 people together are able to do a very a work very fast. That is like your GPU. Your GPU is like an office of many small cores, or a group, we can say. I'm just saying office because I took the example of mother and father, but this is like a group of many small cores. When you bring many cores together, they are able to do a lot of things. Your CPU is like your main central part of your system, which not only has to do video, which has to show something on the screen. That is not the only task that a CPU has. A CPU has hundreds of other tasks to be done, and those are different types of tasks. So here in a GPU, the task is similar and small, but in huge quantities. Okay, so in a GPU the task is small. What is a small task? A small task may be I just want to know what is the color of the pixel at position 0 1, or what is my color of my pixel at 100 coordinates 100 and 102. So the task is very small. It is like doing a simple operation A plus B, you know, that small task, but it is in huge quantities. Maybe I have to add A plus B 1 million times. Okay, so I have to do A plus B, means in the sense A can be different and B can be different, but I have to do the same calculation 1 million times. So the amount of times I have to carry out the same instruction is huge in number, but it is small. So when you have 1 million times, if you have to add two numbers, that task is big if you have to see a overall picture. But the task in itself, the smaller piece, the one instruction is small by itself. So this is what GPUs are tailored for. They have many small cores compared to your CPUs. So your CPU has a quad core or something, but your GPU will have many cores inside the system, and it can do many tasks at a given time. So we will look into CPU and GPU little later. It's coming forward, and but this is what is asymmetric multiprocessing, where the two processors are different. They are meant for different things. That is what is called asymmetric multiprocessing. This is what is called symmetric multiprocessing. So if you have a factory where there is a washing machine in one place and where there is a microwave in the other place, the processors for the two units are going to be something different. It is going to be architected as per the needs of that particular machine, right? So that is what is asymmetric multiprocessing. Okay. So what is your UMA architecture, right? It is your uniform. So we are talking about multi-processors, okay? Uniform memory architecture. So this means that if you have a processor P1, and you have a processor P2 inside your system, this can mean two processors, or it can mean two cores also inside your single processor. But if it is there, then it will have a shared memory between the two cores or two processors. And that's why it is called. So if P2 is modifying some data, then it is storing the data in shared memory. That is the advantage, right? If it is storing in the shared memory, this memory is closer to the processor. This can mean your cache area. This can mean your local memory specially designed for these two processors. It does not mean necessarily mean RAM, okay? Your RAM can be separate. But your RAM is actually not a shared memory also, you can say, because the processes inside the memory, RAM memory, is kept separately. But here it means if the shared memory is here, it may mean that the data can be shared between the two processors, and hence it is faster. And what is your non-NUMA architecture? So NUMA is non-uniform. One is uniform, one is non-uniform. So if uniform means shared memory, then non-uniform would mean no shared memory. So your P1, if there are two processors P3 and P4 inside your system, the memory won't be shared. This fellow will have a memory called M3, and this fellow will have P4 will have a memory called M4. So inside your system, you will have P4 will be assigned a separate memory. There may be some communication line, but they are not shared. So if you dedicate a memory to the processor, then definitely that it is an advantage to the processor in a way, right? But if it has to be shared, then yes, there can be a issue between sharing into other memories. So this you can say it's like your local memory. So non-uniform memory architecture is an architecture where each processor in the multiprocessor architecture have their own local memory. Your uniform memory architecture is a multiprocessor architecture in which all the processors inside the system they have a shared memory. That is what is the difference. So we spoke about 4 multiprocessor architectures, right? We spoke about symmetric, asymmetric, UMA and NUMA. Now the question is, can we mix the two? Yes, of course, you can have P1 and you can have P2. You can have M1 local memory. You can have P2 as a local memory M2. And plus we have a shared memory. Nothing is stopping you from creating this kind of architecture, right, inside your hardware. You can have a mix of NUMA plus UMA. UMA sounds like a name. So and plus you can have you can have a symmetric processor or asymmetric. If you have a asymmetric architecture, then this can be your CPU, this can be your GPU, and plus you can have P3 and let's say M3 another processor. This can be your GPU number 2. You can have 2 GPUs. If you have 2 GPUs, then like if you are playing a game, a game is constantly, what is a game basically? It's an animation, right? It's a set of images that is constantly moving very fast. If it does not move fast, you will not get a feeling of the game. So the game, and the better the quality of every image, more better you will feel about the game. So that's why GPUs are used. So if there are 2 GPUs, means you will have a good gaming experience. So if you are buying a gaming laptop, then you can expect definitely, if there's a gaming laptop or there is a video processing laptop, that laptop definitely will have more GPUs. So this is so how the multiprocessor is architected. You have all possible ways. Okay, so now we will talk about different multiprocessor types. Okay, how at every step, right, we are seeing how we are trying to improvise the performance of a computer, how we are achieving parallel computing, how we are trying to achieve parallelism. So so let's now talk about multiprocessor types. We already spoke about CPU, GPU, right? So now let's talk about multiprocessor types. So now let's have an expanded view of a processor. So this is your processor, okay? So there are four types that we usually speak about. One is SISD. S stands for single, okay, and M would stand for multiple. So single, and I stands for instruction, and D for data. So single instruction, single data. It means if you have this kind of an SSID processor, let's say you have a SSID processor inside your computer, it means at a time one instruction can come inside and one data can come inside. Just think of these lines as wire, okay? So this is your data line D1 and this is your instruction line I1 over here. So one instruction can be fed inside your system and one data element can be brought in over here at one given time. Maybe I should just look at the diagram. There's another diagram. Hold on. Where it is? So there is your data coming in here, which is let's say A is equal to 2 and B is equal to 3, and the instruction is add. So only one instruction is coming and one data is coming in a SSID processor. The output will be 1. So this is how the processor is designed. So what does it mean? It means the next instruction will have to wait for it to be executed, right? Your next set of data has to wait before you can execute it on the processor. So that is what SISD processor is. Computers which are created using SISD processor, they are called sequential computer. Everything happens in the sequence. First instruction 1, then instruction 2. But those are olden time computers. Modern computers are more capable than SISD. So this is your SIMD. So which means if I send instruction 1, I don't have to send, if it is the same instruction multiply, let's say for example, I don't have to send it 2 times if I'm supposed to multiply 2 numbers. I need to multiply A and B over here and a different number A and B. So both the task is same, right? Both the instructions are the same, only the data is different. So in this case, I have 2 cores. Let's say this is core 1 or core 2. Your core 1 can get data 1 and this core 2 can get data 2. But the instruction is same, multiply. So I can apply in one go, I can apply the very instant the same instruction and pump in two data at the same time, right? So this is called a single instruction multiple data. So once you have in a SIMD, the more the number of data lines, the more the number of output you get. So where is SIMD used? So let's so let's say you have a screen, right? This is your computer screen, and your resolution is you want to show an image of pixel. Your computer screen is nothing but a set of pixels, right? So it depends on your resolution. So 1000 by 1000 resolution would mean how many pixels we are having? 1 followed with 6 zeros. So for every pixel I need to decide a color. So this is an example which can be done by a SIMD processor very fast. So let's say this is my SIMD processor. And I can have one instruction which is decide the color, which is coming from here. So instruction 1 is what? Decide the color. And from here I will not have only 2 lines, maybe, sorry, let's give a different column. I may have, depending on the type and the capability of the SIMD processor, I may have how many lines? 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter, right? But usually what we'll see is you can have let's assume it has 32 data lines. One instruction line, but 32 data lines, which I can calculate the pixel for 32 pixels in one go. And of course there will be an output of for 32 lines. And if I have two SIMDs, so let's take this. If I have two SIMD processor inside my computer, then I can process 64 data points, and I can also either give the same instruction, or I can in this case let us assume I'm giving the same instruction I1, decide the color. So which means now 64 data lines can be processed and 64 pixels can be processed. Where do we see this example? We see this in a GPU. GPU here I'm talking about a logical processor, sorry, physical processor, but in GPU sometimes it gets confusing. But let's assume that you have they say that logically you can have 1000 cores, okay? That is what they say. So we'll have a look at this, but let us assume there are 1000 cores inside your GPU, and there are 32, each core is your SIMD, okay? So there are 32 data lines going in each core. So how many points you can calculate in one cycle? I'm talking only about one clock cycle, okay? 32,000 data points can be calculated in one cycle itself. And how many clock cycles we have in 1 second? It depends on the speed of the computer. We, as I told you, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You take one cycle out of this. In that one cycle, which is like 1 divided by whatever this number is, you know, in that much time you're calculating 32,000 data points. So so if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, how many cycles are going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? I hope you all are understanding the maths now over here, how the math is getting calculated. If we have total this many points, right? So total, this is what? Total pixels to be calculated divide by what? It will be total pixels calculated per clock cycle. This is what? This will give you the answer of total clock cycles to process all pixels. Now remember, in your screen, your video or your game, every time the image is changing, right? So every time you have to process this many pixels, and that is why your normal CPU does not suit. You need something like GPU cores, where there are a lot of cores working together to show you that one image after another image. It's called a frame, right? Every frame has to be calculated. One frame is equal to this many points, and this many points has to be calculated, and it has to be given to all the cores inside your system. So your GPU is nothing but a combination of all SIMD processors. Okay. So the question comes, what is your CPU then, right? GPU is a combination of all SIMD processor cores. Then what type is CPU? It depends on your computer actually, but I'll give you an example of my laptop. I have an i7 7700 laptop. This is a quad core. It has a quad core CPU and it has a NVIDIA GPU. So NVIDIA is a company name. So this is my what my laptop has. It has one CPU which is got quad core and which is one GPU. Since it is a quad core, what will my CPU look like? So this is my CPU. So definitely when we are talking about CPU, we are talking about a symmetric multiprocessor, right? And it has got 4 cores in that. So it's almost like saying I have got 4 processors. Now this 4 processor as a whole This is my CPU. It is of type, the CPU is of type MIMD. What does MIMD means? Multiple instruction, multiple data. Because CPU might be handling multiple programs, right? It may be getting instructions from two different programs, which is totally different. You cannot expect the same instruction. One is doing addition, then the other one is printing something. It may be totally two different instructions. So it doesn't make sense for CPU to assume that every processor will be given the same instruction. So you need to create a separate line for each CPU. So CPU will have an instruction line over here. This CPU will get instruction I1. Let us go from top. This instruction will go from top. So this is I1. Then this fellow, since it is a multiple instruction, multiple data format, this fellow will get I2. Totally different instruction. The third core is going to get different instruction, which is I3. And the fourth fellow is going to get a different instruction I4. So how many instructions are getting executed? 4 instructions, and those are different, you know. But additionally, each core inside my computer is a SIMD core. So as a whole it is MIMD, but inside my MIMD I have 4 core processor, and each one of them are what? SIMD, single instruction. Multiple data. So moment you say multiple data, what then are we saying? We are saying that I am having most likely multiple data lines coming inside my system for each core. So I do not know how many lines we have exactly in my system, but let us assume this is 32 data lines. In the same way, my second core is also having 32 lines. Over here. In the same way, I have 32 lines data over here. So what does this mean actually? It means even though there are 4 instructions coming in here, each one is behaving like a SIMD, which means if there's instruction 1, I can do on this instruction, I can calculate at least 32 data points over here in one go, in one clock cycle. Second instruction, I may have another data set which can calculate, another instruction. So this is what the processor types are of: SISD, SIMD, MISD, and MIMD. Right, 4 types. Now, additionally, if you have a vector register, so vector register is also a register, okay. Vector register is also a register, but in a vector register you can store a very big data set. So let us assume one number takes, to store a number it takes 2 bytes. So to store 32 numbers, I will require a 64 byte vector register. So these kind of registers are very useful to process what? Data sets. If it is a scalar register, you can, it will store only one data point. But if it is a vector register, you can store multiple data points. And this can be your array, right? A of 32. Is equal to, you have all kinds of numbers over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, goes on, whatever, 32. So this data, if you are using vector register, this data can be pulled very quickly and put in the register. And I told you register is the fastest, smallest, nearest memory to the processor. If you are accessing between the core and the register, if your this speed is extremely fast and the processing is very fast. So now we are seeing the power of parallel computing, where multiple data lines are executed at the same time, but also the fetching and the storing and the saving can happen faster because you are using vector register. So vector registers, so if you are dealing with your GPUs, then definitely there is going to be a lot of vector registers inside your GPU architecture. There is going to be a lot of SIMD processor. So your CPU was the first type of processors which initially came. We started with SISD, but the processor architecture keeps on advancing from time and time. The power of the CPU, GPU keeps on increasing from time and time. So we have to, if you have to understand the power of your computer, you have to understand the power of your processors. So we already spoke about scalar processor and vector processor. Vector processor, they deal with vector data, okay. So we'll maybe I don't, let's see. Let's go through the slides. So these are the 4 types of multiprocessor architecture, right? Symmetric, asymmetric, uniform, NUMA, and cluster processing. So cluster processing is nothing but you're getting multiple cores together for the same task. It is like mandated, like this set of like if there are 1000 cores inside your system, then 100 cores are assigned to one task. That task is going, so that is a cluster, it's a group of processors which is tied to a particular task. Then we moved on to SISD, SIMD, MISD, MIMD. So this types are also called Flint's taxonomy. Okay, usually they don't ask question on Flint's taxonomy. There's a question on multi-core processors, but all these points are coming inside your answer. So it says CPU that has a AVX, advanced vector instruction. So this means if the CPU has a AVX, it can do vector processing. And what is vector processing? It is working with vector registers. So it says a scalar processor is of what type? SISD type. Okay. Vector processor works on data sets such as arrays. So this is very useful when you are having games, videos, image processing, because there in this kind of application the data is big, not the instructions. The instructions are usually simple. Vector processors are of SIMD type. So now we can halt here for the day. I feel is 4:46, and we'll continue tomorrow with that last part, NVIDIA, and we'll move forward with the current computing and then task computing and whatever the last time data intensive computing. Is there any other question? Let me take the attendance. Let me at least can stop the recording.